Hey, welcome to the Social 333 podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bentley. Today, my guest is Darius Ross. Darius, welcome to the show.
Pleasure, Mr. Bentley. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you got going on.
I'm a real estate entrepreneur and a social activist, motivational speaker, and an author. And right now it's looking at creating, as I say, entrepreneurial experiences for people that are currently going through trauma and trying to transition.
The Mastering the TPS Blueprint by D-Man Ross. I like that.
It's the man.
The man?
The man.
So tell me a little bit about the book, not giving away any nuggets or anything like that.
The book was based upon navigating the experiences for people that are going through situations and they're experiencing trauma, right? Whether it's PTSD, whether it is dealing with mental illness and so forth. And a lot of people are dealing with urban PTSD. They're dealing with the violence in the inner city and they're dealing with the problems and just trying to cope.
Does it touch on anything revolving around, I see mental illness now. That's good. Because there's PTSD for a lot of stuff. I suffer from PTSD, or I used to suffer from it. I had a huge life-changing operation, then I had it again recently. And I experienced all kinds of stuff. And I think one of the worst things I probably could have done that I wish it's kind of a regret, is that they offered therapy, mental therapy when I was in the hospital. And at the time I was in the government field, so you can have a therapist because you could divulge secrets of the government, and I had a top secret clearance, so it's like a big faux pas, and if you leak any of that kind of information out that you have a therapist, then it's like a whole investigation. It's a mess. So I pretty much suffered in silence. Well, my mom suffered with me, but it was pretty bad. I suffered really bad from it, and man, all kinds of stuff. I'm thinking about all kinds of stories. So like it would be just small stuff would set me off. One time I almost tore apart. Like I grabbed my mother, almost tore her apart. I felt like I was gonna tear apart. One time, like something didn't work out well. Like I spilled some protein shake, and the protein shake went flying. I mean, like the whole gallon jug thing went flying everywhere. Just had like bad instances of just bad stuff. But you also have stuff like you were saying, stuff in the street, stuff like that happens. Talk to me a little bit more about that kind of stuff where people have. I know you have a great story where you overcame a lot of odds when you were young. Talk to me about some of that stuff.
One of the biggest things, as you mentioned, about the whole military process, right? One of the reasons behind the book was that I was talking about individuals that had been through the military and they actually suffered military PTSD, but urban PTSD are one and the same. Because once you come back from the military, you're going back to the inner streets, and it's the same problem. Or somebody that goes to jail and they experience the horrors there, or somebody that now is in a enemy country and there's a situation coming back there. So one of the biggest things that I found out is that people don't really realize the impact of that until something traumatic happens. Once it happens, you're still reminded of it constantly. People that have the windows that have to be blackened, they have to drive down the street with shades on, they have to deal with various medications and so forth. It's very extreme. And so one of the things that I found out was that people don't really want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about what they're going through. Because so often, if you're not with a military veteran or you're not somebody else that survived the street life, they have no idea how to connect with you.
Mm-hmm. My thing was when I went through therapy was that and Tony Robbins talks a lot about this stuff, is that you go in reverse. Like I go meet you, you're my therapist, and then we talk about how awful my childhood is. And then it like reopens all those, or pulls back all those scabs, and now it starts bleeding. And then I'm just like, oh God, like that was a terrible visual. But I just, now I'm going back to my childhood, back to some painful moments versus, if you're driving, I got this huge windshield and I'm driving and I'm going straight forward versus that small little rear view mirror that's on this side, right? It's just like, I look at that every once in a while. So, I think that a lot of people are in that boat, just like I was, where they didn't speak to somebody, or like you said, there's nobody to speak that they can relate to. That's why I think a lot of these men's groups that are Christian based are very good too. And doesn't necessarily need to be Christian based. It's just somebody, another man to talk to, or if it's a lady, another woman to speak with, and talk about what's going on. Because I found there's a lot of people that go through the same thing that you're going through.
Mhm.
It's just maybe a little bit different here and there, but for the most part, it's wild. I have a good friend. He's one of my agents, and we were talking about. I was in a relationship with a young lady, and we talked about that relationship and how his relationship was similar to my relationship. And he gave me a couple of pointers of what's going to
Mhm.
happen, and I didn't really believe him, and he was
Mhm.
100% correct. So it's a wild thing that, a lot of the problems that a lot of people have, a lot of other people have the same problems, just maybe a little bit off here and there. And I think what happens also is that because there's no communication these days, and I think the world of isolation a lot of people end up being a victim of their own circumstances. They'll be like, oh, okay, well, I'll go, start drinking and that'll make it easier, or I'll start doing some sort of drugs, or I'll start, hurting myself or doing different things to cope with the pain or try to figure out a way out of the pain. And it's kind of like a spiral, just kind of going further and
Mhm.
further and further down. And
Mhm.
I watch a lot of Navy SEAL stuff, and one of the guys I'm trying to get on the show, he talks about how he thought it would be really easy to get out of the service, and then
Mhm.
everybody talks about how
Mhm.
they have these stories of, oh yeah, like when you get out of the service, like there's this guy that'll pay $500,000 a year for you to sit there and like tell stories about whatever and do protection, and the reality is there's nobody there, or it's
Mhm.
like one of those like one out of a million jobs,
Mhm.
and you kind of lose your purpose, and
Mhm.
before you know it, you're like down that rabbit hole of, okay, well, what am I going to do now? So there's a lot of different types of
Mhm.
PTSD out there.
Mhm.
How does someone outside of therapy, or a Christian group or men's group or something like that, what do you recommend for people to do? Like, what are some steps that people can take proactively to help their situation?
The first step is acknowledgement. You've got to wake up and acknowledge the fact that you're sick. I mean, and that's not in a bad way, but I am suffering from something that was caused by whatever the circumstances were, whether it was captivity, whether it was in a situation inner city, whether it was something that was going on divorce, whether it was violence. I'm suffering. Now I got to acknowledge it. And after acknowledgement, then it's what I'm going to do about it. And one of the biggest things of it is people don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to take accountability to the fact that I'm here. Forget about how you got there. You're there. Now what's next? And then the steps are, after you take accountability, now you have to acknowledge the fact that the steps that I need to take will actually, in some cases, isolate me. Because now I'm in a set group of people that are all suffering from the same thing. Now we have alignment. Now what are we going to do? And after you have alignment, now you have to turn around and have the alignment, acknowledgement, and then the acceptance. The acceptance of the fact that it's not going to change. I have to deal with this every single day, and I have to accept the fact that part of me is different than what I used to know. That's one of the biggest things. People don't want to accept the fact they're different now. You saw combat. You saw somebody's arm blown off. You saw combat in the inner city. You were a rape victim. You were a victim of a murder, attempted assault, whatever else. You're different now. You're never going to wake up the same ever again. That's the thing. When you get that acknowledgement and acceptance of the fact, things will change. Now, how am I going to deal with the fact that I'm different?
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I'm trying to think of my own experiences. Like when I woke up out, I guess, yeah, I mean, I really couldn't see that. So like when I woke up out of the hospital bed, like I could see that. When you're in a toxic relationship, physically and mentally
Mm-hmm.
abusive relationship, you look at things a lot differently. And that's how I am right now. Especially when it comes to dating or other females. I'm just like, do I want to get into another relationship? How is this going to work out?
Mm-hmm.
Is this person being nice to me, and like something else, the other shoes going to fall?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right. Like I'm never going to take that experience
Mm-hmm.
away. Like I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and be like, "Ooh, that was fun. Like let's go try to do it again."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you're just going to carry that weight with you for a long, long time. And that's what I did with my past surgery. And then I went and I told the nurse like straight up, I was like, look, like I suffer from PTSD from my last surgery. Like, if I get quiet it's okay. Like if I decide I'm going to close my eyes, it's okay. Like if I'm doing my own thing, if I start crying uncontrollably, which I know men don't cry, right? But like if I start crying uncontrollably, just leave me alone. Just let me do my thing. Like I'll figure it out. Like if you want to come by and give me a hug, cool. Otherwise, if you want to leave me there, just let me do my thing and just like, on to the next thing. Because that's what happened. Like I'll tell you a story. I haven't told this story. I don't think I've only told like one or two people the story. So I'll tell the whole world, right? But I had my first surgery and I was getting prepared for my second surgery. And I had to go get the CAT scan, which is they put the dye in, right? And I don't really like it because it burns. And I knew it was going to burn. I knew it was going to suck. And I was sitting there in the prep thing. And, like the thing that I don't really like about the doctors and nurse stuff is like they'll show you all the stuff that they're going to do before, like all the tools and all the syringes and stuff. And like I'm twitching and trying not to freak out and trying not to run out the door and like try not to fight and all that kinds of stuff. Because it's happened before. I've had hospital police called on me. And I just started crying uncontrollably. Right there. I was sitting in the seat. I saw all the syringes. I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to suck. And I was like, here we go again. And just started crying uncontrollably. And they walked by. They're like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, just give me a minute. Yeah, just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. And I cried the whole time, just post-traumatic stress. And if you were to tell anybody, probably somebody watching this is like, dude, like you're a wuss, or like anybody else. But somebody else has been through it. I know people that have had the same surgery that I have had 3 times. And I read some Reddit stuff about it. So, when I look back at it, I'm like, well, that person's done it 3 times now. So it's just, I don't know, like I'll always, like you said, always carry it with me. There's no amount of therapy. There's no amount of Tony Robbins I could do. I mean, I could feel better. I could feel positive. I could put that and compartmentalize it and stick it somewhere. But at the end of the day, like I'll still have the scar. I'll still see the scar every single day.
See, I think the thing that's interesting about that is I window pane it and say this. This is the old you. This is the new you. Now, how are you going to take those pieces and put them all together and become a new you? And accepting the new you. That's the hard part.
Right.
You keep going back, okay, I was the old person. Get over it. There's a whole nother ingredient on the table now. Now you're baking a new batter, so to speak. What are you going to do about the new batter that's up to bat? And now how are you going to hit the home run?
Right.
That's left in life.
That's kind of what I did. I sat in the hospital bed for hours, obviously, days. And I just thought, I just meditated, but just deep thinking. And after I got over the part where I thought I was dead and everything was a dream, which I still kind of have, I still think about it, is that I just realized that like, okay, now that I have it and I'm a big fan of God, obviously I serve the Creator, and I said, okay, well, I put everything in His hands and I'm going to serve Him, and that's it. Like, my life is that, and I never turned back.
Well, see, you threw a curveball in there when we talk about faith, right? So many people don't really understand what faith means and how that impacts. When you're sitting in your back and you're looking up, and I have a program that I talked about years ago about cursing God. You get to a point where you're looking up going, okay, why me? Why me? Why not you? That's how you reverse it. Why not you? When you look at every single day somebody leaves this planet and every single day somebody's born again, why not you? You have to go through those struggles. Those struggles create opportunity. Yeah,
it creates and defines you. It's the whole Alice in Wonderland thing. And it never stops. You think that, you're going to sit here and be like, okay, well, done that. The rest of my, I don't know how long I'm going to live, but let's say the next 50 years, I'm 48, right? The next 50 years is going to be just me chilling at home watching Netflix, right? Like, you're laughing because it's not going to happen. Like, it's just not. Like, life, as soon as you get bored, life will throw something at you.
On purpose.
Yeah. And it's a wild thing. And, like, the thing that's gotten me through is just gratitude. Like, even, like, the darkest times or the hardest times or whatever, I know it's just for me. Like after this, like I'll be better. Like, and I'm thankful that I'm going through it because it's going to make me tougher or better, or the company's going to grow faster, or that I'm going to be more profitable, or whatever it is that I'm looking at. But it is really hard when you're in that hole and you're looking up and you're like, why is me? Like, why are you forsaking me? And all those thoughts start running in your head. Oh yeah. And you know, cause I was on that path and I was like, oh, everything that is negative is happening to me now. Or like, you know, after my mom passed away, I was just always looking for some negativity coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's because, you know, my mom passed away or this happened or that happened. And before you know it, like I was just digging myself into a hole versus being like, oh, well, like, you know, that sucks. Whew, I'm glad I got through that. On to the next thing.
It's a challenge because you're being challenged every single day to be a better person. What do they say? God gives you no more than what you can handle.
That's true.
And in some people's cases, what they can handle, they don't even understand the duration. I mean, as a government man, you understand the Navy SEALs, Delta Force, and so forth. Those types of training stretch you to the limits. Not everybody can make it,
right?
Which says something.
You know, the other thing that I was thinking about was not only like gratitude, but you know, we're talking about faith. And one of the things that I saw, I want to get this guy on the show, but he was talking about God's blessings and his grace. And I've experienced that. And it's a great thing. And if you haven't experienced it, I know everybody's experienced it at some point, you probably just don't have a word for it, or you just didn't really understand what happened. It's kind of like a warm feeling that happens, at least for me. And it'll be something that's like unexpected. Like, how can I give it a really good example? And Tony Robbins gives a couple, but for me, I'll give you one. I was short. I was short on some money, and I said some prayers before bed, and wasn't really expecting much. And I woke up and like, you know, a couple hours later or whatever, and I got a ding in my PayPal, and it was like $750, which I really needed to pay the rent. And I was like, and I didn't even know like that account was coming towards me. And I was just like, that was God's grace right there. But the thing is, a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this when I was younger, is that you ask for something. I know we're getting like very spiritual and very religious here, but you ask for something, and a lot of times what will happen is it may not get delivered immediately, and it usually doesn't. It takes some time depending on how big it is too. It depends on, you know, what you want and how big it is, but it'll get delivered to you if you continue to have faith. And you know, what is his name? I talk about him all the time, but I'll remember here, or else I'll think about it later and I'll remember. But famous comedian and his life, and he would just talk about like, you know, you would ask for something, and it would, you know, that you asking that prayer or whatever gets sent out, and then it comes back to you. It's just a matter of when. And a lot of people, like, they ask for something, and then when it gets delivered, like, they send the postman back, which is really, like, when I was younger, I used to do that stuff, but now, like, I just see it better. And I think a lot of people, when you're suffering from post-traumatic stress and you ask for stuff, it gets delivered, but they end up sending it back. And I used to do a lot of that stuff. And like, now that I understand it better and I understand what it looks like, I don't do that anymore. Like, if I ask for something and it comes to me, I'm grateful and I say thanks. But outside of that, like, I don't do that. And I think a lot of people do that. Like, they ask for a blessing and then it comes to them and they end up just sending it back.
But see, that's the power of manifestation and the power of acceptance. See, you can manifest something, but if you're mentally and spiritually and enlightened, not able to accept it, that's where it goes wrong. And you got to be able to accept the blessing. And you're not acceptable of the blessing because you've been downtrodden for so long, you don't understand that, okay, maybe it's your time. So people don't get that. You know, they've been hammered for so long, and then they go, okay, I just blessed you. Meantime, you're going, damn, can't be possible. Can't be possible. You're doubting it. That's the problem. They can't accept that they've been through this transition and now there's a change coming. That's why I talk about the trauma to triumph. You got to be able to accept the fact when you look at that man walking up that hill, what that's all about. The book is actually talking about it. You've been through all that boulder that you're pushing up to get up there and finally shine. You got to accept the fact that you can shine.
And I think a lot of people just miss it, and I think that's just the difficulty of it when you're in that state and when you're down that hole.
Mm-hmm.
You're always looking for the negative and you're never looking at the positive. And then when your ticket gets called, and that ticket comes in, you just, you question it, or you just push it aside, or you send it back, and then you're stuck in that hole again, or you dig it even deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a wild, wild, wild time. Let's flip it a little bit. So someone that is suffering from PTSD, whether it be prison or surgery or major event, divorce, death of a loved one, military, what steps outside of what you talked about, like where do you think the first thing for someone to do outside of just accepting it? What do you think the next step? Do you recommend them doing a Tony Robbins? Do you recommend them seeing a therapist? Do you recommend them getting spiritually enlightened or a Christian group or something like that? Something very small for somebody to do. Because that's how it was for me. Like, I needed just something small. Like, just give me something. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be the light at the end of the tunnel, but just give me like a flashlight. You know what I mean?
I am here looking in this mirror and looking at myself and asking myself one simple question. Do I want to leave? That's the only thing you got to ask yourself. Do I want to leave? If you can ask yourself if you want to leave that space, that's the first step. If you ain't ready to leave that space, I don't care how many times the gurus, myself, and every other author or every other inspirational person tells you. This is what I always say. I personally say I'm not a motivator, I'm a liberator. I liberate your mind to the infinite possibilities of what you can achieve. So when you look at me, you say, are you motivating? No, I want to liberate you. I want your mind to open up. Look in that mirror and say, is my mind open? Am I open to change? You're not open to change, that's it. Stops right there. You can go no further.
Tony Robbins talks about looking at the mirror and you decide that you've had enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that a couple of different times where I've looked in the mirror and said, okay, Chris, like I call myself Mr. Bentley. Okay, Mr. Bentley, like this is it. Like I've had enough of this. Like I've had enough of being fat. I've had enough of dealing with this terrible relationship. I've had enough of this. Like enough is enough. And then you make your plan from there pretty much.
Well, you mentioned something about relationships, and I can talk about that personally speaking, having been in a number of them that type. There is something about us that draws those people into our zone. That's the first problem. Now you got to go backwards. Why do I keep getting the same reception? There's something you're doing wrong, because it goes back to childhood. What was it about my mother and father's experience or grandparents' experience that I saw and that I accepted the view of it? I brought it home. Now it's home, it's resting in me, and now I can't get past it. Because until you take an accountability of the fact that you caught on to that and you accepted it and you kept bringing it in your house, then that's why this person keeps coming in your house, male or female. They're coming there because you're acceptable, because you saw something as a kid that said, oh, that makes sense.
I don't know. I'm still working on that. Because the relationship stuff is different from, there's a lot. I mean, it's more of like a men's group Christian conversation, but from what I've seen, I think, I don't know, maybe I'll have to think about that because you gave me something to think about.
And see, I'll segue it, I'll make it even easier. My mother and father, right? I saw him doing all the dirty deeds he wanted to do out there in the streets. And I became Super D, save the girl. Every girl that came along, I wanted to save because I visualized my mother that way. And I viewed my father as the enemy. So then all of a sudden, I wanted to save every woman that came in my life. How do I make her life better? How to financially make it better, on and on. And most of my friends dealt with the same thing. Their fathers were whippersnappers. And then they turned around and got these girls. And it's like, the girl became bad. She became the villain. But it wasn't the girl, it was us. Because we saw something that stuck in our minds that, oh, this makes sense. We got to turn around and save the girl. versus saving ourselves, because we couldn't realize that we weren't the problem. It was the situations we kept seeing, and we kept trying to figure out why.
I can see that. Because I grew up in a not a great household, and then the women that got their life together don't excite me. But the ones that got a little edge to them and like, just a little different, because I'm a little different. Like, I'm just like, yeah, like I'm really interested in that type of woman. But the ones that like got their stuff together, I'm just like, it seems a little boring.
You're Mr. Fix-It. That's what happens. You become
Maybe,
Mr. Fix-It.
Yeah, I guess so.
But you can't fix what is not broken.
Right.
They're okay because they're comfortable in their zone.
They're happy where they're at. Right. That's interesting. I'll have to think about that some more.
And see, I'll segue with the last part of that. The other part of that is acknowledging to yourself this magical thing. If I keep on fixing them and they can't fix me, then that's the biggest problem. Because then there's no risk and reward. It's like my book on the dating appraisal. If you appraise the house, right, and you look at the house, you say, okay, structurally sound, everything is sound, this house should stand up. But you look over there at the edge and you see the foundation is cracked. Same thing with the woman. If she's been through a series of men, and this goes into a medical study situation here, every man that she's dealt with leaves behind a DNA sample, okay, sexually speaking. So you're walking into a half a dozen men plus that may have left this DNA sample behind. And you want to come in there clean, trying to say, okay, I'm going to straighten things out. You can't.
Right.
Because all these things have been in her possession, and now how do you think it's going to change? That's a walk away.
Yeah, I'm getting smarter with that stuff. Even though I enjoy the company of that, it's like a painful reminder of my last relationship. So I avoid it.
That's it.
Of sense, that's really cool. I enjoy that person, and they're great. Fun to hang out with. Not sexually, just fun to hang out with. But at the same time, like, I want somebody to raise my standards in terms of like business wise, and and like it's great to have somebody that's very nice and feminine and supportive versus someone that's tearing you apart every single day.
But then it means we have to become teachable. That's the other part. Are we teachable to the new ingredients? We get a woman, like you just said, that's got her stuff together. Now that's a detraction because a high stepper we enjoy. But the woman that's normal and basic, we don't enjoy her because she's going to bring something to the table that's going to force our hand. We have to be forced to leave that space.
To change. I like that. And then the change part is the hard part.
Because you got to want to change. Need to change, okay? You got to want to need to change. That's the hard part. I want to need to change.
That's funny. Let's see. What didn't I talk about? Guerrilla Principles. I saw that on here. And then I saw that you have a new book that's coming out in September talking about dating appraisal, which we kind of talked about. So talk to me a little bit about the Guerrilla Principles, and then we'll jump towards your new book.
The Guerrilla Principles are just that I'm talking about how to change your life, just like the Vietnamese guerrillas are doing. The United States had all the military equipment in the world, and the Vietnamese were walking right up under them using pea shooters and destroying their equipment. A war that you couldn't win, in all due respect to those veterans, but that was a situation that you couldn't win. And so often you get into situations that you can't win because you think orthodox. So many times you have to think unorthodox. What got me here? How can I avoid going through the same scenario and drama? And unfortunately speaking, part of the process is you have to think out of the box. And out of the box thinking is accepting the circumstances, okay? You walk into a situation like they say, you can't bring a knife to a gunfight. It's true. Okay, if you know the guy is outnumbered, outmanned, and whatever else, Sun Tzu, the art of war. Know when to walk away. Unorthodox thinking. We sit there and we fight a battle that you can't win. Very simple. Start recognizing the key linchpins and the key points, or the red flags, if you want to call them, to know that you can't win. And stop assuming that you're going to continue to engage an enemy or a situation that you know you can't win in. And we do that so often.
I was just thinking about my past relationship, sorry. It's the same thing. It really is. Because it's what what got me here, and then I'm fighting a battle that I can't win. Like, I can't change that person. I can't change their past. And then me trying to figure out a better way or a better scenario, it's going to be the same thing. It's just, I'm going to lose to the pea shooters.
So the guerrilla principle is just that, adapting to the terrain. What terrain am I on? Under what circumstances am I dealing with the situation? And ultimately speaking, what's the goal? When you're in a situation where you have no goals and you have no agenda, that's the first mistake. Additionally speaking, you don't have the right equipment to deal with that. So for example, if you're a man, you're dealing with a woman that you know is way out of bounds, you either have to elevate up or leave her alone because you're not equipped for that. If you're in a situation where you're a woman dealing with a man that you know is out of your league, then again, you have to elevate up or leave it alone. So there are basic situations there that you have to adapt to the terrain. And everything has to be adapted accordingly speaking, like they did with the Vietnamese. They adapted the punji sticks. Now, the strangest, simplest thing was a sharpened bamboo stick. You walk over it, you die. Simple. But it's covered up in the jungle. So they adapted to the terrain. It took us forever to create special forces to adapt to the terrain. The Green Berets had to turn around and say, listen, expeditionary forces, you got to go out there and figure it out. But this is what was happening. Adaptability. Can you adapt to your terrain? That's the true guerrilla principles. Being prepared to whatever happens, ready for it.
Darius, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, maybe learn more about your book or your upcoming book as well, and then any sort of speaking events, where would they find you?
They would contact me at DariusWrites.com. Again, that's Darius, WRITES, Writes.com.
Darius, I appreciate you being on the show. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Pleasure.